In the whipping, I'm whipping the soul out it. Chin the tone when I'm festing like Pilates. Why you frontin', you act like you somebody. Keep a trail in the Ville, how I go by it. I was stuck in the rut, I was nobody. I've been looking for something to go body. There's an art to the hustle like yo got it. Kid got a kick back and hit like a new shotty. In the whipping, I'm whipping the soul out it. Chin the tone when I'm...
Yo, what is good, Titan Clan? It is your boy King Tinex here, back with another video. This video was made by yours truly and the help of Purple Heart Neptune once again. Very appreciated help. So basically how the story will go off is simply not much would really change at first. One of the very first things that would probably be a difference is the fact that Izuku is a redhead. He still keeps the green eyes and freckles, but the redhead is from his father's genetics. His father's genetics because of the fact that Lex Luthor has been known to have red hair before he ended up going bald. This is something that would end up being in Izuku's genetics and would make him more similar to his father. Of course, they would also be pretty well off here considering that this is Lex Luthor. He is a pretty wealthy man and he's also rather intelligent. One of the most intelligent, he's been talked about by many people throughout his life. Basically, what people would say about Lex Luthor is that when you meet him, you would basically be able to tell that he is a very, very intelligent man. He is probably one of the most intelligent people that you will ever meet. When it comes on to how he is with others though, Lex Luthor is a bit hesitant of heroes, you could say. He never necessarily hated heroes or anything. It's more the fact that he was born quirkless. He never really had any powers in this world, and this is something that his son would also inherit. His son was born quirkless just like him. Of course, when he found that out, he would have been a bit upset. He would have been upset because of the fact that his son would have to go through some of the struggles that he had to go through when he was younger, in order to really show to others that he is worthy of standing on the same pedestal as other heroes. Sure, he's not necessarily a hero himself, but throughout his life he has shown that he was rather capable of himself. He could actually defend himself, and he was actually able to make a name for himself in the business industries and get plenty of connections throughout his life. Of course, though, this wouldn't necessarily go on to Izuku. Well, at first anyways. He would have to build up connections himself. He would have to start from the ground up. And one of the very first things that he would have to learn is that nobody is going to give you any handouts in this world. Nobody is going to hold your hand in this cruel world. This is something that he would learn from the age of 4, when his own friend Bakugo ended up leaving scorch marks on him. He would have to walk home with bruise marks all over his body because of the fact that Bakugo found out that Izuku was quirkless, and Izuku trying to end up defending some kids that he was bullying. He learned that if you are weak, you really are nothing in this world. You will be insignificant if you continue to be weak in this world. That's something that his own father would instill into him from that very age. From that day moving forward, he would establish that you need to get stronger. Become stronger every single day. You cannot afford to let somebody else really begin to surpass you, because as soon as you let that one person surpass you, a whole wave of people will. What you need to do, son, is to beat fire with fire. You are not just anyone's child, Izuku. You are the son of Lex Luthor. The blood of Luthor flows through your veins, and us Luthors do not give up. You need to get stronger and faster. Become better than the rest. Being quirkless is just a minor setback. You were born with a handicap, sure, but that doesn't mean you are not completely useless in this world. You can still show that you are the boss. You can still show that you are capable. Look at people throughout these years. Look at people throughout these centuries. For crying out loud, some people were born with even worse disabilities. Some people were unable to move their bodies throughout most of their lives, or something along these lines. For goodness sake, look at some of the century's brightest minds. People like Bill Gates, people who literally just had apples fall on their heads or something. Look at people like Mozart. They literally ended up going deaf throughout some of their life. They weren't deaf, but they were still able to make a name for themselves. So why do you think you, with all 5 of your senses, with the capability of still moving your body, why do you think that you cannot be a hero? Please, tell me. Is it because you're quirkless? Well, guess what? You can still do something. We are brilliant minds. That is something that cannot be taken away from you, Izuku. And so from there on, Izuku would end up trying to learn many things. From the age of 4, Izuku would start to learn about how to build nanites, how to basically create nanite weaponry, you could say. Not only that, but he would also be training his body as well. He realized that he couldn't just train his mind, because sure, that would probably get him far in the business industry, but when it came on to being a hero, it required more than just brains. It required a physical body to really handle the sort of stuff that most heroes go through. Fighting villains, trying to rescue civilians, all of this stuff. Which was why his father put him under a strict training program. 20 sit-ups, crunches, squats, push-ups, a kilometer every day for every year that he's alive. Every single day he would do that sort of exercise. Absolutely no breaks, no cheat days, none of this stuff. He would even be under strict diets as well. Within 2 months, Izuku would come back to Bakugo. He would have been much stronger than Bakugo already, because let's face it, most 4-year-olds do not go through that sort of extreme exercise. Although it may not seem that much at first, well, the 20 sit-ups, crunches, squats, push-up stuff, at least to me anyways, because I tend to do a little bit more than that. Anyways, but what ends up happening is that Bakugo, he would not have been expecting for Izuku to actually be this much stronger. He didn't really see much muscle on Izuku. Granted, most 4-year-olds usually aren't even supposed to be putting on any muscle in the first place. Izuku looked rather similar to how he was before. Maybe a little less chubby, maybe like a little less body fat on him, but that's about it. And Bakugo just wasn't really expecting for Izuku to really put up much of a fight this time around. He wouldn't have tried to bully Izuku, only for Izuku to actually fight back. He would show a staggering difference from what he was 2 months ago. Bakugo would have been shocked, to be honest. Be shocked at the fact that Izuku was even able to really fight him. He thought that he had this in the bag. After all, Izuku was the quirkless one here, while Bakugo had pretty much the best quirk in the whole class. He could emit explosions from his hands. Who else could really compete with that? What, the guy who has wings? The guy who can stretch his fingers? The guy who can pull his eyes out of his head? That's just a disgusting quirk, in all honesty. None of these guys were really were really able to compete with him when it came on to quirk usage. So for a quirkless kid to actually beat Bakugo left him with a sore wound. He was pretty salty, to be honest, and he demanded for a rematch. He thought Izuku cheated somehow. Even then, when Bakugo did fight Izuku again, he still lost, and he's wondering how. How did he lose? Even when he got a rematch too. How did he lose? This is incomprehensible to Bakugo. His whole world just shattered within 2 months. He had already started to build a big head, but no, Izuku already deflated that in just 2 months. What happened? People would even start to give a rumor about how Bakugo ended up getting defeated by Izuku, the quirkless kid of the class. Many people didn't think that Izuku was strong or anything. They just thought that Bakugo was now weak and that he wasn't really all that he really boasted to be. They didn't really think that Bakugo was all that strong anymore, and because of this, some bullies from other classrooms would try to pick a fight with Bakugo. They wouldn't really care about the quirkless kid at first until they realized that Bakugo was still able to beat them. And they're wondering just how. They're wondering how that works. Is the quirkless kid really that strong? Or no, those were just rumors. They probably just made it up in order to make Bakugo seem bad or something along those lines. So they would probably go after Izuku as well, only for them to also lose to him. They weren't able to really compete with the kid who was doing such exercises every single day. His endurance was off the charts, you could say. He was literally running a kilometer every single day. Eventually though, like all bodies, he would start to get used to this sort of exercise. And basically, he would probably have to adapt. Throughout the years, he would have started to add some weight to his exercises. When it came on to those push-ups, squats, those sort of stuff, when it comes on to calisthenics, eventually your body gets used to doing push-ups, squats, all those sort of exercises, and just simply trying to add more number to it, trying to add more sets. That doesn't necessarily work all of the time. So he would end up adding some weight, maybe like 5, 10, 15 pounds. Basically just a gradual increase in weight throughout the years. But he would also be much more focused on his nanite weaponry. This is something that he was, of course, very interested in because of the fact that there was quite a bit of capabilities when it came on to nanites. They were extremely flexible. They could do a lot of things. Many people underestimated what nanites could really do. Even his own father wasn't completely aware of what these nanites could do if they were in the right hands. When you have been learning about nanites for 10 plus years, you would really start to get a good grasp on them. You would start to know the insides and outs of them. He would have even had them in the development process by this time. Izuku may not have completely understood what nanites really were at the age of 4, but by the age of 14, he would have been able to pretty much call himself an expert. By the time he was around 8 years old, people wouldn't have even bothered to really try to bully Izuku anymore, considering the fact that he was a rather built 8-year-old. Basically, it looked like he had Myostatin Deficiency. If you guys don't know what Myostatin Deficiency is, it's basically like that sort of chemical that's in your body, that sort of gene, and that inhibits muscle from really being built. because of like the winter times. Basically, what ended up happening is that during the Ice Age, I believe, the body started to develop this sort of mutation where it basically inhibits you from really having a bunch of muscle. It limits your muscle capabilities because of the fact that they needed more fat to really survive during these times, and this would persist throughout many centuries. This is a gene that would be kept in our bodies for years to come, although there are certain mutations in some humans where it basically is non-existent, or if not non-existent, basically there's very little of that gene in there, that sort of chemical within the body. And of course, with that being limited now, with that being taken out of the equation, it would allow for 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, basically, and kids that probably never even lifted a weight in their life to already look more jacked than somebody who's been bodybuilding for like 5 years plus. So yes, by the time he was 8, he would look rather impressive and intimidating, and those muscles weren't just for show either. He had already been lifting weights from a very early age, so of course nobody would really want to really risk fighting Izuku. They knew that fighting Izuku would basically be them making a death wish. By the time he was 14 years old, I already mentioned that he is already well versed in nanotechnology, but something else is that he pretty much looks like Baki Hanma from, well, Baki the Grappler. Well, his pre-time skip self anyways. He's rather short during this time though. He's a manlet, you could say. He's only like around 5'5", 5'6" in height, but when it comes onto his muscles, they are rather bulging. Even while wearing a shirt, a long sleeve shirt, maybe 2 shirts or a jacket, you could tell that he's rather built. He has a large chest, he has pretty good abs as well. His legs, his arms, everything about him, even his neck was swole. You could tell that he really did not skip out on any sort of exercises. He was basically a gym rat at this time. But he would have already gained a reputation throughout his middle school life. I'm going to be honest, during this time though, things wouldn't really be too different from canon. Well, things would be different considering the fact that nobody would dare laugh at Izuku when he said that he wanted to go to UA. The only person that would really try and do something is Bakugo. Bakugo though, he would try and fight Izuku only to just get slammed to the side, because Izuku just wasn't having it with him today. He would establish that he was going to go to UA, whether Bakugo liked it or not, and just because he was quirkless didn't mean anything. After all, he had something on his sleeve, and something under his sleeve that he could use. He wouldn't necessarily tell anybody about his nanotechnology just yet, but this was going to be his plan to really get into UA. He wouldn't have had his nanotechnology be one of the most useful things for him during this time. Until a certain sludge villain incident happened. You see, during this time, the sludge villain would still be trying to escape from All Might. Izuku was walking home at this time. Well, more so, he was doing a jog back home. He was running a 1 kilometer run once again. This is something that you basically would do every single day, like I was established before. But this time he would just be running home. Not out of fear or anything, but just because he didn't feel like taking a train or anything. He had just gotten so used to to running that it's basically second nature to him. The sludge villain would see Izuku and realize that he has a pretty great target right now. This guy looks rather built as well, so if we were to take over his body, he could probably do quite a bit of stuff with this body. He would try and take over Izuku's body, but unfortunately this guy was rather strong. He actually would end up basically being defeated by Izuku because of nanotechnology being used here. People underestimate nanotechnology sometimes because they don't completely understand that in fictional universes, this sort of stuff can actually be quite useful. Even in our reality, nanotechnology can be quite useful. With all the different developments that could be made surrounding nanotechnology, the possibilities are endless. Through a combination of Izuku's strength and his nanotechnology, he was able to easily take down the sludge villain. He would be scattered all throughout the tunnel, and on top of that, there would be some charred mics all over the tunnel because the nanites would have a bit of a tendency to kind of heat up as well. In order to really be combat effective, they would adapt to any sort of situation. That's basically how Izuku would begin to have designed his nanites throughout the years. And of course, All Might would actually appear right after Izuku had defeated the sludge villain. The sludge villain would have been scattered throughout the walls, and All Might would just see the charred marks. Originally, he would understandably assume that this was because of a quirk user, probably some sort of fire quirk user or some magma. He didn't really know to be certain, but he figured that it was just from any sort of quirk user. He would have never guessed that this was from somebody who was quirkless. What ended up happening is that Izuku would end up actually seeing All Might and explain the situation. He would explain that he was quirkless and he actually ended up using his nanites in order to defeat the sludge villain. He knows that although when it comes on to quirk users, they're not necessarily allowed to use their quirks in public like that, but he is not a quirk user. He is quirkless. He would even demonstrate the usage of his quirk. He would demonstrate the usage of his nanites. He would just make a nanite construct, and All Might would have no choice but to believe him. All Might would be pretty shocked, to be honest. Not only that, but he would take a look at Izuku's body. He would begin to observe it and realize that Izuku is a rather buff kid. He's wondering what sort of training was he going through when he was younger. Is he some sort of bodybuilder or something? If so, he must have just recently started. Or is he into football or something? Izuku would explain that he's been training pretty much all of his life. He was basically training all of his life because of the fact that he was quirkless. He needed to show others that he wasn't going to just be useless, not just stand around and let other people take advantage of him. Not only that, but he also wanted to become a hero from such an early age. He was 4 years old when he found out that he was quirkless. His father told him though that if you really want to get things done in this society, you need to earn your positions in life. You need to earn your positions. You need to earn it through training. You need to earn it through you need to really earn your positions in life. Whether it be through training, whether it be through studying, whether it be through making connections, all of this stuff. Nobody's just going to lend you a hand. No matter what happens in this world, you have to earn everything that you're given. All Might would honestly be quite understanding of these words. He would remember how we started off as well, when it came on to his master Nana Shimuru. When it came on to his master, he had to convince her that he was worthy of becoming a vessel for One For All. He had to convince her that he was worthy to become the next inheritor of One For All. And even when he did become the next successor, that didn't necessarily mean he was invincible from day one. He still had to train. He needed to make One For All stronger. He needed to make it stronger. Every single day he would have to train with Gran Torino. His body was already well developed from an early age, but he was still like in middle school or high school during this time, so he was on that more slim figure. So over the years he would begin to train. He would go through bulks and cuts, all of these sort of stuff, and have to go through absurd training with Gran Torino. Even to this day, he still feared Gran Torino for that sort of training he went through when he was younger, but it all worked out in the end because of the fact that he was able to finally get revenge for his master. He was finally able to actually be the first one to really defeat All For One. Because of this, though, he did end up losing quite a bit as well. He was now down to 3 hours because of the fact that All For One basically punched a hole through him. He basically shattered some of his body systems, some of his most important bodily systems, some of his most important organs, all of this stuff. And of course, he wasn't on the best of conditions any longer. So now he was limited to only 3 hours a day. He was looking for a successor as well. And in Izuku, he found that the sort of teaching that his father instilled into him, he could really understand that. He could see himself in Izuku's eyes. He could tell that this kid was really worthy. He was willing to go through some absurd training, go through insane amounts of training from a very young age, also that he could become a hero. Most would probably just quit after finding out that they were quirkless, but no, he was the little wonder that could. And so All Might would pluck out a hair and tell Izuku to eat this. Izuku was confused at first, but All Might would explain that he was in the same predicament as Izuku at one point. He was actually born quirkless, and something ended up happening. This something was basically known as One For All. His master, the one before him, they ended up giving him the quick One For All. He explained that One For All is a power that can be passed down. One For All is a power that he has, and he is now limited to only around 3 hours a day. He would transform back into his sickly state and explain that he got a wound a couple years back which was extremely serious. He had to go through several surgeries just so that he would not die. And on top of that, he's now limited to only 3 hours. He's looking for a successor, and Izuku seems to be the best one. At least for right now anyways. He would offer up One For All to him and mention that he would make Izuku's dreams even more attainable now. And he would establish that Izuku earned this power. He already went through 10 years of grueling training. It's as if he's meant for this power. It's not necessarily that he's gifting it to him or anything. It's not like he was born with a quirk. No. He was not gifted a quirk in this world. He was not gifted a quirk in this world. He was not born with a quirk after all. He was born quirkless and he had to train. So for him to be inheriting One for All, it's not necessarily a gift, but more of an achievement, more of a milestone for him than anything else, because of the fact that he earned this. He had to go through the training, he had to go through the knowledge, he had to go through the beatings, all of this stuff. He knew that he probably felt like quitting at multiple times, but Izuku earned this power, so never mistaken that for just being gifted something. It's earned, not gifted. This is something that All Might would say. Izuku would, with no hesitation, consume the hair, although he would gag a little bit, considering the hair was kind of greasy as well. After all, how does All Might keep his hair up in that certain manner? You know that he probably has a lot of grease going into that hair, boy. But yes, that's basically it. When it comes on to just the percentage anyways, he would be at around 45% just from the get-go. This is because of the fact that he just got the quirk. He's not necessarily at full capacity when it comes on to using the quirk, although he would probably be trying to use the quirk more often, try and get adjusted to the quirk. And thanks to his nanites, it would also help him heal. The nanites would help him heal whenever he went too far with using One for All. So overall, the nanites would seem to be like a Deus Ex Machina when it came on to Izuku. Izuku would just be able to fight for more and prolonged hours. He would be able to basically do even more than he was in canon. He already gets adjusted to the quirk from day one. He has 10 months to train with his quirk. It's not like he literally got the quirk on the day of the entrance exam either. So for those 10 months he will be training his body in order to get adjusted to One for All. And he would also, remember, he has legs here. He would eventually learn how to spread the power to different parts of his body all at once actually. And so he would actually unlock full cowling rather early. Now we get into really interesting territory, because by the time of the entrance exam, he would have already had One for All for like around 10 months. Because of his already developed body, he would have actually managed to make it all the way up to 90% of One for All. He is incredibly strong here. He's too strong, to be honest. He's pretty much a beast at this point. People would already be detecting his presence and be sure to steer away from him. He knows that he is the stuff, and because he knows this, he is kind of arrogant. He has the right to be arrogant, after all. He is Izuku Luthor. He has One for All. He has nanites. Who is capable of stopping him here? So of course Izuku would end up going to the entrance exam. He would not trip here, so he would not have the interaction with Waraka here. At best it would probably be the opposite, where she trips and he's the one to rescue her. He would sit by Bakugo. The two wouldn't really say anything to each other, and either would still go on his loud monologue or something along those lines, whatever you want to call it, some sort of speech. But that's not important here. What's really important is when it comes on to the exams. When it comes on to the written exam, you guys already know that Izuku would actually ace the exam. When it comes on to the physical exam though, this is when things get kinda interesting. Because of the fact that Izuku has 90% of One For All controlled now, he's already able to just speed blitz everybody. He's getting like 20 points at a time, and by the time it's like 5 minutes in, he's already like in the triple digits. He's already in the triple digits, for crying out loud. I'm sorry, I cannot speak for a second. So you already know the point. So basically, Izuku would basically be flexing the whole time. He's probably only using like one finger jabs to destroy these robots at this point, because they're like they're twigs to him. This is not a sort of competition. This isn't even fun anymore. This is a joke, to be honest. And the teachers are within the they're just watching the exams from the monitoring room, and they're just looking at Izuku like, are we seriously looking at the next All Might? Hey, whose man's is this? Who is this kid? They will probably be looking at his files wondering, wait a second, this is the Son of Lex Luthor. No wonder, what the heck, no, this is a different breed. Of course Lex Luthor would make his kid super strong. He probably put some genetic modifications to make sure that his quirk was extra strong, super strong, for crying out loud. But enough with that banter. Izuku is clearly number one here. And in this universe, we're going to add a little bit of fun here. We're going to be adding some characters from different media. After all, in this universe, basically when it comes on to Lex Luthor, he is from the DC universe. When it comes on to the DC universe, it is full of superheroes. So we're going to say that DC universe also exists here. At least the cartoon ones anyways, so like not to the extremes of the, well, comics. The comics are just way too insane. Of course, everybody would probably get a bit of a debuff as well. And when it comes on to people like Superman, yeah, they exist here. Although, well, Superman is actually dead. I should have said this from earlier, but when it came on to Superman, Superman is actually currently dead in this series. All Might is the number one hero of Japan. But when it comes on to the heroes in America, those guys are usually a different breed because of what they can really do. All Might is strong, but he's kind of weak right now. He's in the weakest states now. He's in the weakest stasis because of the fact that he is limited to only 3 hours, and he's 60 times weaker than he was originally. That's literally what he ended up saying before as well. It would have taken him like 5 punches to defeat the Nomu in his prime. So for him to say that he was 60 times weaker, naturally, All Might would have been some more of a threat in his earlier years before that injury. He was a good rival for other heroes in the different countries, but right now, he's weak. He's very, very weak. But Izuku would be the one to replace him. Izuku was going to be the next All Might. He was going to be the next symbol of peace. After all, he did have the quick One For All. After all. And when it comes on to some of the superheroes as well, they will actually be sending some of their psychics. Not even psychics, like some people that they knew had potential. These people would be kind of interesting due to their quirks. And let's be honest, they're going to be kind of interesting. They're going to also be replacing some other people within Class 1A. And so let's see. Zero, Sugar Rush, Ojiro, you know, the tail guy, And Koda, you know, the one that talks to animals, yeah, they get replaced. Kaminari and Toru too, actually. So that's about like 6 people that we're going to be replacing here. And in their places, what we're going to be having are Black Lightning, Blue Beetle, Herald, Cassie and Agent, Kilowatt, and Tram. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Manetta is actually kicked out of the pier as well. I'm pretty sure you guys don't really care about Manetta, so that's not really much of a concern here. So I'm basically going to be placing the images on the screen, all the people that were kicked out from Class 1A, and all the people who are going to be taking their spots. In case you guys don't really recognize who these guys are, I'll probably be putting the names up on the screen as well. Hopefully, at least as best as my editing can probably do during this time. Of course, let's see. After the whole entrance after the whole entrance exam, you know, Izuku has already made a name for himself. Izuku has already made a name for himself in where he is probably like one of the strongest candidates for the year. After all, he got like over 100 points. He got like 400 points. Honestly, he was getting like 100 points in the beginning. 5 minutes in, he was already at like 100 points, and then he just kept on moving faster and faster as time kept on moving on. He was going from like 100 to 200 to 300, and then he finally stopped at like around 400 points. The teachers were just amazed by his capabilities. Same for the students as well. People would be having rumors about this kid, saying that, hey, did you know this kid with red hair and green eyes, he seems to be on the shorter side, but well, his quick, it's just insane, to be honest. He's able to do so much. He's literally able to just take down these robots like they're pieces of cake. He gained like 400 points. He was literally consuming all the rest of the points. We barely got anything compared to him. He destroyed the competition, and it would be the same for during the quirk assessment as well, because the class would still be kind of noisy. And of course, another thing is that Izuku would end up probably hearing Bakugo and Ida argue. Aizawa would have woken up and grew annoyed by the noise and told all the students to put on some gym uniforms and meet him outside because they're going to be doing the quirk assessment test. He would establish early on that whoever failed would be expelled. So of course everybody would be pretty serious about the exam, even though Uraraka would try and stand up for some of the kids and say that it's not fair that he's already trying to expel them on their first day. After all, they earned their spots here, so why should they be expelled on their first day? But Aizawa would simply say that life is not fair. Izuku would agree with that statement, remembering the fact that he had to earn everything. He had to earn where he is today. He had to earn his respect. He had to earn his power. He had to earn everything that he's gotten throughout his life. Nothing was a handout for him. Even One for All wasn't a handout. He had to literally tell All Might his whole backstory in order to actually gain One for All. And even if he didn't, he probably would still be making it into Class 1A because of his nanites. Because of all of the new additions to Class 1A, the competition would be much steeper around this time. And in this version, Izuku wouldn't destroy the competition like most of my what ifs, to be honest. Izuku would have destroyed the competition And on top of that, he would have also done a little more stuff. He would have actually started to pay attention to some of his classmates' abilities. And just look at Bakugo in comparison. He was basically lagging behind a good portion of the class, considering, yeah, he has an explosion quake, but that's literally all he has, while others are literally making portals or flying or something with ease. Bakugo barely has any of that. So Bakugo would be dropped down by like 7 spots. These guys would be taking the cake here. Izuku would just be looking at Bakugo's sorry state afterwards. He would be just looking pitifully at Bakugo, considering the fact that the once high and mighty Bakugo Katsuki had literally dropped all the way down to like 8th place or something along those lines. It was pretty embarrassing. Not even top 5. Like, sure, he managed to make it into the top 10, but actually, no. No, more like 11th place, actually. Because we have to take into account that people like Momo and Todoroki still exist. Bakugo literally has like 10 people ahead of him in that same in that same quick assessment test. He had those 10 people ahead of him: Izuku, Harold, Blue Beetle, Black Lightning, etc. All of these people were ahead of him. Can you imagine the state Bakugo was in at that point? He was furious, he was raging, all of these things combined. He was losing it. He wanted a rematch. He wanted to fight everybody here because he refused to believe that he was so low, not even top 10, not even top 5, for crying out loud. This is supposed to be his Hero Academia. This was supposed to be his story about how he became the #1 hero, not theirs. He was supposed to be the main protagonist. He literally had all the characteristics of one as well. So what? This did not make any sense to him. When it came on to others as well, when he saw the competition, especially people like Uraraka, they would have just felt pretty defeated. They would have felt hopeless in the end. But to see that she still managed to make it up, she still managed to get to where we basically allow her to just be slightly above 20th place. I'm not quite sure the ranking, but she still managed to really succeed in her goals. She's able to actually, sigh in relief, but to really think about how steep the competition is and realize that she has to train even harder here if she really wants to continue learning to become a hero, because now she's realizing that these kids are no joke. She managed to make it into the top high school, and this is really showing that these guys are going to be a pain for her. This competition, it only makes sense though. She wanted to become a hero. She wanted to go to UA. She wanted to go to the best hero in high school, and this was a competition that she has to be prepared for. When it came on to like Bakugo's reaction to Zuku, where just look at him pitifully, like I've said before, but he would actually say something to him that will enrage him even more. Look, and this is what Zuko will say. Why are you getting mad? Please, explain this to me, Bakugo. You want to get into the best high school in the country, right? Well, congratulations. You're in the best high school of the country for its career path. the best hero high school in all of Japan, possibly in the world, to be honest. So please tell me, what exactly were your expectations here? Did you expect for this to be some sort of cakewalk? If so, you need to be severely disillusioned. This is not going to be some sort of cakewalk. In fact, to think that the competition was going to be weak, that's just discrediting yourself. That's really discrediting everybody here as well. Everybody earned their spots. Everybody. So for you to think that it was a cakewalk, that's going to be your downfall. You need to start trying to learn that your quirk isn't going to just be everything. You're going to need to develop skills in order to keep up with the competition. So, good luck out there, Bakugo. Obviously, Bakugo would be even more upset and try and fight Izuku, but Aizawa would quickly use his capturing scarf, or his capturing weapon. I don't really know what you called it. But basically, he would use his scarf in order to wrap around Bakugo and use his quirk in order to erase Bakugo's own. And yeah, Bakugo would be forced to calm down because Aizawa would actually threaten him with expulsion if he tries to actually find Izuku once again. Granted, he would not even win in the first place, considering all of the other times that he was defeated by Izuku, even before he had a quirk. So taking all of this into account, yeah. Now, this is probably what you guys are also wondering about. This is something that even Purple Heart Neptune was wondering about. What is the ship in this story? We ended up discussing a little bit, and when it came on to Momo, she's an interesting choice, but at the same time pretty common. She has money and resources. Yeah. And she has that to her advantage, but Izuku has more of it. He is the son of Lex Luthor. Do you really think that's going to be anything interesting to him? He has more money and resources than she'll ever have. That and actual muscles. So at best, she'd probably be a fling. Of course, though, the two that he would probably be more interested in are Argent and Cassandra, because they have complete powers. When Lex Luthor approved of Izuku having multiple things going on relationship-wise, my answer to that is who cares? And on top of that, this man probably would see it as justified. He probably would not care, to be honest. So basically, these two are going to have to share Argent and Cassandra. Now, this is going to be like the last piece. Now, we're going on to like the more interesting parts of the arcs. Alright, so look, when it came on to the battle training arc, this is when things were getting kind of interesting, considering the fact that Izuku is going to be fighting more people here. This has been randomized over this time. Only 3 matches really matter because, well, yeah, I said so. Only 3 matches would really matter in the end. Alright, so basically, here's how things would go. Static and Kilowatt, they were the villains. They would be up against Mina and Ochako. Mina and Ochako obviously have no chance against those two, so it's basically Cassandra sending a get well card for those two. And when it comes on to the next match, Kirishima and Tram versus Shoji and Cassandra. Oh my goodness. So it's gonna be a milliwatt because Kirishima can't really fend off against a person like Cassandra. She's been said to be like small building level, for crying out loud. Sure, it may be a pretty good fight at first, but they would soon realize that she holds way too much of an advantage in the strength department. It would be them fighting fist to fist, but in the end, it's not going to really work. At best, what's going to happen is that it's going to be Tram versus Cassandra, and even then, Cassandra is Wonder Girl. She still holds the advantage in strength. She may not look like much at first, but even when Tram actually powers up and shows his buff form, some people may see it as some sort of homage to All Might, considering how he is like so bulky at some points. Well, they wouldn't really know about his inflations. All Might I'm speaking of. They wouldn't really know about All Might going in and out of his inflation form, but they would know the fact that All Might is huge and muscular. They would realize that this kid is huge and muscular as well when he actually transforms, and that's why they see it as a bit of a homage to All Might in that sense. When it comes on to the actual fight though, Cassandra is still able to beat Tram in the fight. He's not weak by any means, no, he's rather strong, but she's just more agile, more committed, more fighting spirit, all these things. So an epic fist fight, but in the end I can't animate, and this girl is just too strong for Tram to really keep fighting in the end. So the last one would be Oyama and Blue Beetle. They will be the villains in this situation, and Zuko and Argent won't be the heroes. Zuko would also basically have a suit. This suit I failed to mention earlier, but that's because I didn't feel like it. This suit is basically what you could say sort of like an Iron Man suit. It's modeled after his father's suit as well, in the sense that it's green and it has a bit of a force field as well. They basically see a suit and they're kind of impressed. Of course, the suit has the nanites covered as well, so there's even more flexibility here. When it comes on to the actual fight though, let's face it, Oyama basically French Boy is just getting knocked out in like the first couple of minutes. Like the first minute, as soon as Argent sees him, it's basically that he tries to blast her, but she just blasts him back with even more force, and it just knocks him out cold. When it comes on to Blue Beetle, they would try and fight Izuku, sure, but Izuku is just too strong for him. Izuku is much more agile, and his quirk is just boosting his physical stats through the roof. He's at like 90% of 1 for all, but he's holding back the whole entire fight. So, well, basically, he gets knocked out in the end. Blue Beetle I'm referring to. Even when he tries to shoot his arm cannons at Izuku would just use 1 for all to basically make an air fist. He would punch the air with so much force that it would be blowing back at Blue Beetle, and they would actually knock him out cold as well. he will be blown back with so much force that he hits the wall and is immediately knocked out in a snap. And by the end, Izuku would have ended up immobilizing him, and Argent would do the same to Oyama. So in the end, of course, these guys would end up winning their fight. Congratulations, everybody. Now, when it comes on to the rest of the fights, I don't care about enough of them. Those are the only ones I really care about. Argent and Cassandra would basically be rewatching the tapes and see just how impressive Izuku was. And yeah, they would actually begin to really admire Izuku. They would begin to see that he is really strong. He's really muscular. He's kind of cute as well. I mean, he has the red hairs, the green eyes, the muscles, the freckles. He's like just a bunch of things all wrapped up into one, and he seems to be rather intelligent as well. It's like he's a whole package, you could say. Izuku would hear the two talking about him, and he would just make some sort of comment, some sort of slight comment mentioning how he's willing to date both of them if they really want, and of course a blush would form on their cheeks. I'm going to be honest, shipping isn't really my thing anymore. So when it comes on to talking about relationships and all of that, I'm not that well when it comes on to that sort of stuff. I've never even been in a relationship myself, so this sort of stuff is just kind of weird to me. But I'm going to try my best. When it comes on to that, they just think, is this guy serious? He can't be joking. He better not be joking. That's basically what's going in some of their minds. And of course, it's understandable, but some of the guys are going to be looking at Izuku and realize that he's a bit of a Chad. So next thing you know, the other thing that's important to really get is the polls. Basically, the next day, Aizawa would come into the classroom and mention that all these guys did pretty good work. He would actually applaud Izuku here, mentioning how he was able to actually subdue his nemesis in this time period. He was actually able to take down one of the villains, although he would probably reprimand Izuku for using a bit unnecessary force rather than trying to just immobilize him as quick as possible in a less harmful manner, because heroes aren't supposed to kill. That attack could have actually killed Blue Beetle if he wasn't in that armor, which of course immediately begins to have Blue Beetle become wary of Izuku. He wasn't really thinking about that at first. He never really thought about it, but yeah, that blast from Izuku, that attack from Izuku was rather strong. So if it was able to knock him out in his armor, you can only imagine how it would be if he was without the armor, if he was just in his regular clothes. He did not want to imagine that. Imagine him just being a splat on the wall. Izuku would apologize, and Aizawa would just wave it off, saying, "No need, just think about that for next time." The next thing that would be established though is the voting system. He would basically say that everybody needs to pick a class representative, and he doesn't care how they do it, but as long as they get it done by the end of class. Zuko would end up getting voted to be the class rep after Ida decides to basically establish that they should do a voting system, a democracy of the sorts, and Zuko already proved that he was rather capable in the other exam. He's been proven to be rather capable of himself, so they figured that they would probably be best to have a strong class representative. Of course, this would be Zuko, and Zuko would actually win by like 8 votes here. Especially now, the reason why he got so much more votes is because of the fact that he stood up for those other characters, the other characters I mentioned before. He basically stood up for them in the beginning against Bakugo. He basically said that these guys all earned their way into UA, so they would have honestly already been at good terms with him. They would have seen him as more of the leader type, and so Izuku is winning by a landslide. He wins by a landslide and gets class rep. Of course, Bakugo would still be angry, and he would probably end up mentioning why Izuku was able to get like 8 votes when they've only been here for like 3 days at best. Izuku would just simply say that, well, he's actually likable. Bakugo would take extreme offense to this and say that he wants to fight him. Aizawa would end it as soon as it starts, so saying, "Watch your mouths." This is not important at all. Now I'm going back to sleep. Everyone would just be silent and just look back at Izuku, wondering what's going to be the next thing to do now. Of course, they will all end up going to lunch, and when it comes down to the news reporters that they had to deal with earlier during the day, they would have actually made their way onto UA campus. They would have actually broken in, trying to get interviews with the students, and an alarm would go off. Many students would be panicking because this is the first time they've ever had a security breach, and they were assuming that a powerful villain must have made their way into UA, so there was mass hysteria. Either would have just seen like most of these kids just standing though. Izuku and this group, they weren't really even moving much at all. They were just standing there. Todoroki wouldn't have been there as well. That's the reason why he was also just sitting down. He wasn't really moving. He probably assumed that these guys knew something he didn't. So that's why he decided to just hang with them for right now. They also seem to be rather strong. Izuku would simply say that, well, there's about 200 people in this building, and with those 200 people, they have well-developed quirks in their own regards. If anyone were to actually make it into our premises, this private premises, in this private premises, they're basically signing a death wish, considering the fact that they would probably get wrecked by these sort of quakes. When they hear this logic, Ida ends up resigning. He ends up realizing that Izuku is right and decides to sit back down. Izuku would basically yell at the students, basically do a thunderclap of the sorts, basically get everybody's attention and inform everybody that it's just newscasters outside. They just broke into UA, and with all of the well-developed quakes here, you guys really don't have to worry. Think about it. You have like how many students are in these different classes You have two hero courses per grade level. We literally have like 3 years at this school. We have 3 grade levels at this school. Think about it. And the 3rd years are the most developed ones. So that's like 40 kids per year. That's 40 for first years, 40 for second years, and another 40 for third years. So that's about like 120 people right there. And then think about those in the support course. They need to have some sort of quirks that are developed as well. If not developed quirks, they have developed engineering. So that's like 20 students probably. Like I would assume that's probably like 20 students right down in there per grade level. So going by that logic, that's another 60 added. Another 60 people who are capable of fighting, defending themselves in any sense of the word. If push comes to shove, that's 180 people. And then I assume that when it comes down to the general course, there are probably people within the general course who could have made it into the hero course as well, but because of the way the entrance exams are formed, they weren't really able to get into any of the hero courses, so they had to reside with simply being in the, general courses. So think about it like this: 180 students right there. Then you add another 60, 240 students. And then you want to have to think about the newscasters. Do you really think that the newscasters are going to be all that much of a threat? Don't make me laugh. These guys aren't going to be any issues in the long run. These guys are a joke. These guys, you guys don't have to worry about anything. We are capable of defending ourselves if we really need to. So, in the eyes of everybody, Izuku would have definitely put a stone onto his seat. He would have cemented himself as the class rep of Class 1A. And many students would actually kind of cheer for him, saying that he is making a lot of sense here. They like the way that he thinks. He is officially known as the leader of Class 1A. And as for the bus ride, when people ask about his quirk, he would probably just say that he just has a regular super strength quirk. When people are just asking about his quirk, they just say that he just says that he has a super strength quirk. Nothing too out of the ordinary. It's just that he really trained his body from a very early age, and he was a bit of a late bloomer as well. So with all of that taken into account, it's no wonder why he's so strong. And yeah, he would also then ask about his group of friends quirks as well, because he's actually rather interested in their stories. But that's where I'm going to be leaving it off. Well, more so, I'm going to be leaving it off after adding this one last piece in, because this is like over an hour of recording at this point. The last thing I'm going to be saying is, like, once they actually do make it to USJ, similar interactions would happen up until the Stark Portal would appear, and a large group of villains would actually come out to the portal. In canon, Aizawa would have probably started for the students to get behind him, either that or make it back to the bus, something along those lines. But in this version, he would realize that a good amount of these kids are actually rather capable of themselves. So he would actually bring these children into combat. He would tell them to all fight for survival and try and find an escape as well. So obviously, this is where I'm going to be ending it off. They're now going to be fighting many villains here. Many villains, and with this new roster of students, I guess we'll have to find out how all of this evolves. Until next out.